What are the best personal development courses to go on? I've been practicing as a professional coach now for nearly 20 years. I registered the business in 2005, but I've been dabbling with personal development and spiritual development, I would say, for probably somewhere between 20 and 30 years. I'm not 100% sure when I actually started. That's why it's a bit of a challenge to pinpoint when it really started. But I honestly get asked pretty much every week about what courses do I think people should go on, or if they're looking to train as a coach, what do I think is the best coaching course? And I'm going to be upfront here and tell you that I cannot give you that answer if you are looking for the direction as to which coaching course to go on specifically, because it depends on what you're looking for and depends on your purpose behind doing the course. So, I will more than happy have conversations with people around it. But just so that you know, I will never say, oh, you have to go on X course or Y course, because it absolutely depends on what it is that you're looking to achieve. But what I want to share with you in today's episode of Coming to Your Senses is what I think have certainly been the best 3 personal development courses for me in the last 20 years, probably longer than that, actually, and have a conversation with you around that. Now, this is an unscripted conversation. This is a conversation, actually, that I have never openly shared with anyone before. So, dear listeners, you are my little confession listeners, because I was thinking about this recently in the last few months, and it sort of came about as I was reflecting. You know how on social media they will prompt with a memory of, oh, this happened X number of years ago. And a memory came up that got me thinking about that time, and a specific conversation I remember happening, which made me think about, actually, these are my 3 best personal development courses. So the memory that popped up was photos and also footage from a competition that I entered back in 2008, 2009, called Britain's Next Top Coach. The 2 guys that ran it, Terry and Ian, actually only ended up running it 1 year, but they put such effort in to creating something that was more than simply a popularity contest. There was aggregate scoring. They also got some very big coaching names. So not just from people who were running personal development courses, not only people who had written books, but people who were genuinely really successful in the field of personal development. And they not only, they weren't judging us in kind of like a Strictly Come Dancing X Factory way. They were genuinely giving feedback as to what they would think it would be like to be coached by us. And it was a really phenomenal and an unexpectedly brilliant experience from my perspective, because it highlighted for me that I was much further along than I was giving myself credit for in my skill set, my way of being able to be on camera, because there was a lot of filming involved, and my ease around being around different people for different reasons. And it was a great reflection from that point. And Terry Malloy, one of the guys, it was Ian Banyard and Terry Malloy who instigated the whole thing, and as I say, did an amazing job. And I got through to the final. I was the only female to make the final. I was the first runner-up. Therefore, I was crowned, quote unquote, as being Britain's next top female coach. But I remember having a conversation with Terry afterwards, and we were just talking about the complexity. He's run various businesses over the years, and we were talking about the complexity of running your own business and what we notice both for ourselves and for other people that you start to buffer up against. And he said this phrase, which has stuck with me and what's prompted this podcast episode, which was that he believed that running your own business is the best personal development course you can put yourself on. It's the most intense and potentially most costly if you're not aware, but it's something that really exposes you in a way to give you the opportunity to learn and grow. And I remember we had this really in-depth conversation about that, and how if you are somebody who, it basically, whatever the business is that you're running, and regardless of whether it's just you or whether you are bringing on staff, it's going to expose the things that either you don't like doing, you're not good at doing, that you have weaknesses around. And if there's a resistance to that, if there's a desire or a need to cover it up, then it becomes really hard and really clunky, and we can get very stuck in our own ways. We can get very avoidant, procrastinate, striving for perfection, our insecurities to come to the fore. There's so many things that can get exposed. Triggered would be another word that many people often use around this. And yet I think that if you can get comfortable with the uncomfortableness of being exposed in that way, then actually it's one of the greatest lessons that you can learn. I don't think it's exclusive to running your own business, because I think if you are choosing to work your way up in a career, no matter how far you're wanting to go, there's a potential of that there. I think that why I think it's more intense when you're running your own business is because you have to know something about pretty much most areas. So I'm not great with finance and numbers. I'm not comfortable with doing all the marketing. These are not my strengths. I bring other people in, bring somebody else in to do the tech side of things, or I have people that I can lean on. So I either outsource it, bring somebody else in that has that skill set, or I look to get support from someone so that I can still do it, but they're helping me through it. And at first, when I started to get exposed to all of those things, it was really uncomfortable to see just how crap I was, or how much I was procrastinating something, or how avoidant I was, or looking for the shortcuts, or tripping myself up. Self-sabotage is often referred to. But the more I could see that, and the more I could take a step back and go, oh, this is just not in my sweet spot, or actually, this is not something I want to be doing, but I'm doing because I think I should be doing, or whatever it is that's bringing to the surface. It's only when we have those things exposed that we get the opportunity to look at them. But what many of us do is, when some level of discomfort comes to the fore, is we run, we hide, we look to get comfortable as quick as possible. And we can do that in numerous ways. And yet the learning isn't in the comfort. The learning is in the discomfort. And the more we can go, okay, being uncomfortable right now is not wrong. It doesn't mean I'm broken. It just means that I'm uncomfortable, and I need to learn, shift, grow, get support, have guidance, have coaching, whatever it may be, in order to be able to help myself moving forward. The other thing that I think that running your own business in particular, it's much easier to do if it's your own business. It's a challenge to do it when you're working for somebody else. But it gives a great opportunity to start to experiment and to play and to see what it is that you would like to do. Very often we can end up looking at how other people are doing something, and we take that on board as the way to do it, rather than seeing it as a way to do it. And we can absolutely take it on board and go, well, let me have a go with that, experiment. But see whether it genuinely works for you. Does it sit with what it is that you want to do? Does it fit with what it is that you're looking to do? Because there's kind of no point in walking around in stilettos if actually what it is that you need to do is sprint really fast. They're not the most appropriate shoes to be wearing. Is it possible? I'm pretty sure there's some people who can sprint in stilettos. I am not one of those people. But whatever it is that you're looking to do, look to see that it's working for you. Experiment with it, test it, play with it. But check. And that's where I think, from a personal development course perspective, running your own business can really give you that opportunity to start to become even more experimental and playful, rather than looking for the other thing that tripped me up, which will be my third part under this banner, which is looking for the rules. If I'm looking for the rules, I remember having a conversation with a mentor of mine years ago around, and I don't think I said it as directly as this, but I think it was reflected back to me as directly as this. I was kind of intimating, well, what's the rules of the game? What are the rules? What are the rules that I should be playing to ensure that my business is successful? And the mentor brilliantly turned around and went, well, what's the rules of your business? And I kind of like looked around going, well, what do you mean? What are the rules of my business? Surely there are rules of business that I have to follow and fit in with. And he looked at me and went, no, it's your business. You create the rules. You look at how you want to do it. You might, again, want to look at how somebody else is doing and go, oh, let me try that on for size. Hence why the experimentation is really useful. But create your rules. And I think that until we look at creating our own rules, now, whether that is in business, whether that is in relationships, whether that's marriage, whether that's parenting, whether that's in education, whether that's in health, it's working out what's right for you, what actually fits for you. So, for example, for many people, the rules of business up until pandemic were 9 till 5. For the majority of people, that's a very strong mindset that we've been conditioned into. But then all of a sudden, this hybrid working came about, and the possibility of being able to flex that with your home life. And this 9 to 5 rule that many of us had been following, including myself, even though I run my own business, testing it. Does that fit? Is it work for me? Does it work for me? Is that what I want? Because if it is, then great, carry on. Now, obviously, if you work under somebody else's rules, then you do need to fit in with their rules. But if it is your own business, marriage, parenting style, then it becomes about a negotiation with what your rules are and the person you're in relationship with. So from a personal development perspective, running your own business can expose so much about how you might be tripping yourself up or restricting yourself because you're not giving yourself the opportunity to experiment, or you are looking to follow somebody else's rules that don't fit the game for you. So the more you can test those, question those, push the boundaries of them to see what discomfort that exposes for you, that's where you get the opportunity to learn. That's where you get the opportunity to develop yourself. We get to take ownership of that. So that's my number one best personal development course. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean to say that it's not tiring, occasionally stressful or uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, it's certainly been one of the most enlightening courses that I've put myself on inadvertently. So if it's something that you are in or thinking of doing, just be aware that that could happen for you. The second unexpected personal development course, and one of the best personal development courses I've been on, has been happening for the last 3 years, nearly 3.5 years. And that is my little pooch, Finn, who is currently hiding in the corner over there. He's a little bit fed up because I think he wants to go out. And we've got about another half an hour before we close off for the day. And actually, he gets his next walk. But Finn has been a phenomenal gift from a personal development perspective, because he was rescued from the streets and then rescued from being euthanized. And then I rescued him and brought him to the UK. So he wasn't from the UK. And I have, other than having a dog when I was a kid and having a dog when I was married, that wasn't our family dog, it was my stepson's dog. I have never owned a dog myself. I didn't really know anything about the training of them, and I certainly didn't know anything about rescuing one. And I genuinely didn't expect to learn as much about myself as I have by having him in my life. Now, the first thing that I really have had to work hard and continue to work hard to understand with him is his high level of anxiety. So fear tends to be more at the forefront for him than learning. So sometimes his fear will override something that he's already learned. It's got so much better than it was. He wouldn't leave the house for the first 6 weeks that I had him. He still doesn't like certain weathers. He still, if something's flapping in the wind, will freak out. So there is that undercurrent there of fear. And what I had a realization with recently was how many of us actually have that undercurrent of fear. I ran a workshop, an online workshop, which is called Fear and Dealing with Fear and Uncertainty. And through the conversation with the delegates, all of us were starting to see more and more. I was using Finn as an example, but seeing more and more of how afraid we were, but we hadn't really seen that we were afraid because we were covering it up, or we'd managed to achieve a certain goal. So therefore, we'd alleviated that fear for a short period of time, but we hadn't realized how much of a driver it was in our lives. And that was certainly a revelation for myself, that I had to be aware of if I was stressing, if I was getting caught up in the ifs, ands, maybes, and the possibilities, that was unconsciously creating a level of tension within me, which he would then be picking up on even more. So the more I could be aware of what was going on for him, I used him as a mirror to reflect back and check in. Was I getting fearful? Was I assuming something was going to go belly upward, rather than recognizing that there's trust there? I do know how to work something out, or that even if it did go really wrong, that I am physically safe, so that's okay. And I think the more that we can see just how much fear, I've mentioned this in another podcast episode about the water table of fear. If we can recognize of how high it is, we need to let it drain off and challenge it to see whether it's actually true. Otherwise, it doesn't take much for that to go over the edge. And that's certainly where Finn was when I first got him, was very high level of fear table, that it was anything, a slight movement, a slight sound, he would go over the edge. But as that water table is dropping down, he's relaxing down, he's enjoying being a dog more and more. And I think that the more that we do that for ourselves, it's been such a wonderful gift to recognize for myself when that's happening, and just go, well, what would it be like to relax in this situation? What would it be like to trust myself? Or what would it be like to be in this situation, even if there is still fear there, so I'm not trying to get rid of it. And that deep sense of relaxation is a new thing. I was in London not that long ago for a whole week on a course, and for the first time, I think, in my life, I experienced such high levels of ease and a level of comfort in my own skin, which I genuinely don't think I've ever experienced before. And it wasn't just about how I look. It was just everything about how I was showing up, how I was, what I was saying, who I was interacting with, whether that be somebody on the course or a stranger on the street or the barista in the coffee shop. It didn't matter. I was experiencing a depth of comfort in being that I'd not experienced before. And I do attribute so much of that to Finn, not because he has done that to me, but his heightened levels of it, of anxiety and fear, was an invitation for me to look at that for myself. And so the next thing that I think, the two things actually that I think that then led to, and he has inadvertently gifted me, is patience and awareness. Because I've had to have awareness of what could be going on, start to check in, get very honest with myself as to what could be happening, and whether it's me that's in that tension or stress, or whether that is genuinely just him. It's not something he's picking up from me. And by doing that awareness, it's giving me, having awareness, it's given me the opportunity to listen more to what thinking is at the forefront, and whether it's appropriate, helpful, kind, considerate, factual, or whether it's just made up. And let's face it, the majority of the time, it's made up. So the more I can do that, the more I can, through patience, challenge it, question it, put it down, do something different, pay attention to something else. I'm both having that awareness for myself, but also having that awareness of him, so that when we're out walking, I'm very much giving attention to him, so that I can, and my environment, so that if there's rabbits or squirrels or anything that might grab his attention, motorbikes, that might create a level of fear in him, I can immediately go and do an action that would help calm him down before the thing happens, or distract him away from the thing. And I think that's a very similar process that we can do for ourselves, where our thinking can get so heightened into fear, but we can spot it. Actually, we can redirect it into actually what is, rather than what the thinking is making up. And having the patience to recognize that that's a process, having the patience to be kind, to be considerate. And it's been fascinating, because the number of people that have known how he was from when he arrived, I keep pointing over there because that's where he is, but knowing how he was when he arrived, and they have seen him be pulling, be distracted, be really barky, be hiding behind me, and then they see him now, and yeah, we've still got stuff to be learning. We've still got stuff to be working on and training. And yet it's a different way of being. And we are being different. And I think I have learned so much more about myself in the last 3.5 years of having him with me, that I highly recommend it as a personal development course. And obviously, I recognize that it's not just about having a dog specifically. I think pretty much most animals can teach us that. I've had conversations with clients around that are horses people, and talking with them about how they interact with horses or cats and the lessons that they learn there. And even children. I know that parents have said the same thing, that it's one of the most intense personal development courses that they could put themselves on, because a child will reflect things back to them. And whilst I was never a birth mother, I was a stepmother for nearly 10 years. So I do recognize that as well. And that's an intense, I used to jokingly say that being a stepmom is the hardest job in the world, toughest gig in the world. I think it was that. There is so much that we can learn. There's so much that we can learn from this external world, which brings me on to my third best personal development course that is there, is free, is accessible every minute of every day, which is life. And I do think that so many of us miss it. I don't mean that we miss life, but I think we miss seeing the personal development course that life has put us on, is putting us on every single minute of every day. So my diary has changed completely today. I turned up to do 4 different things, 2 of which have been cancelled. Nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the other person either, really. It's circumstances beyond both of their control. So life has provided an opportunity, and I think that very often, I'm pretty sure in the interview that I did with my lovely Australian friend Johnny Cass, we talked about this, that there's a big difference between life happening to me or life happening with me. And that's a certain shift that can easily be made. Because if any of us are caught up in the life is happening to me dialogue, then that's a very victim statement. And we can end up looking at the world, living through the world, that life is being done to me, and therefore I have no choice. I have no responsibility. I can't change anything. It's a very disempowering way of thinking. And I know, because I lived there for probably 3 decades or more of my life. And I think that it was only when I started to truly see that, no, life's not happening to me, it's happening with me, that then I started to see the other possibilities and opportunities that life was actually was offering for me to see, whether it was the little gifts of somebody gifting me a coffee or something in a coffee shop, which has happened today, or whether it's I don't know, getting the little nudge to leave at a certain time rather than wait 5 minutes because of the rain. There's all these little opportunities that life offers over and over again. And when I think about it, there was a story that one of my clients shared many years ago now, after she did the Santiago, the Camino de Santiago, even walk out on the Spanish side, the pilgrimage. And I can't remember. I've always got 7 weeks in my head. I don't know if that's exactly how long she took, but she did the whole thing in one go. And I remember her telling a story, and if I get this incorrectly, if you are listening to this, you know who you are, and I apologize if I'm not getting the details quite right. My recollection of the story, as she told it, was that on the Camino, you meet up with different groups at different times, and then there's various points where they've gone off to stay overnight, and you carry on walking till the next town, and so you might not see people, but then you'll catch up at different points. And she said she'd reached to a certain point where she went into a town, and there were quite a number of people that she'd met at various points, and they were all sat around and having dinner and laughing about how the Camino provides. And she was like, what do you mean the Camino provides? And someone said, well, my rain jacket broke the other day, and I was talking to my friends about it, and someone came up to me and said, oh, well, you can have mine if you like, because I'm finishing the Camino today. I don't need it. And it was the right size, and gave her the rain jacket. And someone else said, that's really funny, because I had the same thing where shoes were concerned. My boots were broken, and I was going to have to stay another day in the town we were in to wait for the shoe shop to open. And someone said, well, hang on, what size are you? Because I'm leaving the Camino today. You can have mine. And all of these stories started to come around at dinner about how when they needed something, someone else provided it. The Camino provides. She said the very next morning she left the hostel, was about to walk off on her own, and bumped into another pilgrim who happened to be a priest, and they started to walk out of the town. And they were chatting to each other, and then they reached a certain point. It was either a T-junction or a crossroads. And he looked at her and said, which way is it? And she laughed and said, I don't know, I was following you. And he laughed and said, well, I was following you. And they said, oh, well, let's get the map out. And then they both looked at each other and they were like, I haven't got a map. I haven't got a map either. And she said in that moment, there was a gust of wind and a piece of paper flew around the corner and landed right in front of them. And it was a map. And she said it's one of those things that it sounds like a fairy tale. It sounds like a fake story, but it's so true that the Camino provides. And when she was retelling me this, when she came back from the walk, she said, it's not just the Camino though, because if you actually look, life provides. Doesn't always provide you with what you think you need or want at that point, but it provides you with something that is going to help you to the next stage, whatever that may be. And the more open we can be with that, and instead of arguing with life and going, yeah, but I don't want that. I didn't want it to be this messy. I wanted it to be this way, not that way. That actually we can relax a lot more and be with what is rather than argue with what is. And so I told her I was going to steal her story and put it to the test. And over the years, I have put it to the test. And I believe that it is true that life works with us and life provides. And even today, as things have been moved around and things have changed, and it's like somebody's got the table and flipped it over at the moment, I don't know how it's going to work out. And it is uncomfortable as I'm thinking about all those different things that I now need to sort. And yet I do know that life provides. And the more that I can sit with that and be okay with that rather than argue with that, because that is how things are, is how they are right now. So why argue with it? Then that's going to give me a different attitude and a different energy to the rest of the day. And I think it brings me to my third point about why I think that life is one of the best personal development courses we can be on. I'm pretty sure that there was a quote with Steve Jobs that said, you can't see the dots even until you've gone further down the line. I apologize, I'm paraphrasing the exact quote. But that's, to me, what life seems like, is so that very often life provides you with something that in that moment, it I can't work out why is this the way that it is. It's not helpful. It's uncomfortable. It's not resourceful. It's not helping me. But when we get further down the line and we look back, we can join up those dots and go, oh, if that hadn't have happened, even though that was messy and uncomfortable at the time, it led to, or it taught me, or it gifted me something that I wouldn't have had unless I went through that experience. And I think the more that we can recognize we are all in a life that is providing for us one of the best, most intense, sometimes beautiful and joyous, sometimes less so, personal development courses, that actually, when we can see that on a day-to-day basis, things don't necessarily become easy, but I do think that they can become easier. And so that's why I wanted to share those with you today, because I do believe that running my own business, having my dog, and being alive, having a life, are the 3 best personal development courses that I've ever been on. They're accessible to anyone who wants to go on them, have them, do them. We all have the last one, at least, whether we've chosen it or not consciously. But we can choose to open up our minds, open up ourselves to questioning, what can I learn from this? How could this help me? Where and how would it benefit me? And what can I do moving forward from here? So that's my invitation for this episode, is for you to look at and look for the best personal development courses in your everyday, so that you can see how you can grow with life instead of fighting against it. Thank you for joining me today for this episode of Coming to Your Senses. And I look forward to speaking to you very soon on the next episode.